The Super NES launched to a great start in 1991, and it didn't slow down in the least in the following year. A steady stream of top-notch releases more than justified the jump into 16 bits. Even if Sega's sassy marketing made Nintendo look dismally uncool, there was no shame in playing amazing games like the 12 you're about to bear witness to. Contra 3: The Alien Wars. With the original Contra, Konami took a kinda cool arcade run-and-gun shooter and turned it into a masterpiece on NES. Contra 3 jolted everything great about the original with a heavy shock of adrenaline, adding in the wild set-piece-based design of Capcom's Strider. Also here, detailed graphics, insane difficulty, and some of the most imaginative bosses ever to grace a video game. Eventually, you find yourself taking down an invading alien fleet by running and jumping along a salvo of missiles, and that's when you know you're playing one of the most insane video games ever. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. What more needs to be said about this all-time classic? A Link to the Past took the primal inspiration provided by the NES Zelda games and refined those ideas into a game so perfectly polished and thoughtfully designed that it became the template, not only for future Zelda games, but for all manner of action RPGs, for decades to come, an essential part of any gamer's library. Arcana. A truly unique role-playing game from the studio best known for Kirby. Arcana combined classic CRPG-style first-person exploration with tightly crafted mazes and interesting card-based play mechanics. Everything in Arcana revolved, as the name suggests, around tarot cards. While it's largely been forgotten, it was the best Super NES RPG not to bear the Final Fantasy name for quite a while. Super Star Wars. Admittedly, the Super Star Wars trilogy hasn't held up quite as well as your nostalgic memories might want, but back in 1992, Super Star Wars was nothing short of incredible. Sculptured Software's multi-genre action game helped lead the 90s Star Wars revival with glorious graphics, movie-accurate sound effects, multiple playable characters, and some impressive for the time Mode 7 vehicle scenes. With this one game and a little help from the Timothy Zahn books, Star Wars suddenly went from boring has-been to beloved film franchise once again. Legend of the Mystical Ninja. This wasn't the first action RPG Konami ever created about Japan's own Robin Hood, the legendary thief Goemon Ishikawa, but it was the first to reach the US. And even though protagonists Goemon and Ebisumaru were renamed Kid Ying and Dr. Yang in order to avoid frightening timid white people, the spirit of ancient Japan shone through regardless. So too did the spirit of brilliant gameplay with cooperative two-player action and tons of entertaining minigames to break up the adventure. Street Fighter II: The World Warrior. When Capcom gave Nintendo the timed exclusive on the home conversion of arcade phenomenon Street Fighter II, it hit gaming like a megaton brick. This was the game everyone wanted to own, and Sega Genesis didn't have it. With visuals, controls, and music that came impressively close to matching the coin-op, Street Fighter II was the single most important weapon in Nintendo's arsenal for 1992. And little wonder, while it's an oldie, the original Street Fighter II is still a goodie. Mario Paint. And now for something completely different. Amidst the platformers, brawlers, shooters, and role-playing adventures that defined gaming in the 16-bit years, Nintendo turned their efforts to a quieter, more inspiring project, Mario Paint. Part drawing program, part animation studio, part music sequencer, and part game, Mario Paint beautifully demonstrated Nintendo's knack for turning any and everything into a toy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4: Turtles in Time. While this multiplayer brawler wasn't quite as engaging as the original TMNT arcade game had been, the simple fact that Konami managed to put out a nearly arcade-perfect rendition of one of its Turtles brawlers more than made up for it. After 3 good but watered-down NES Turtles adventures, this one featured all the vivid visuals, sampled voices, and crazy visual effects that fans demanded of a Turtles game. This was Konami at its peak prowess. Of course it was going to be fun. Super Mario Kart. Nintendo took the design of F-Zero, slowed it down, made more convoluted and interesting tracks, and allowed the cast of the Mario series to pummel each other with familiar weapons and objects. In the process, they created an entire genre, the mascot Go-Kart Combat Racer. It was a brilliant idea then, and given how well Mario Kart 8 turned out last year, it's an idea that clearly has some legs. Axelay. Oh hey, it's another Konami game. Maybe this is getting a little predictable, huh? But Axelay was great, and absolutely deserves a place on this list. It's an eye-popping exercise in pushing the capabilities of the Super NES beyond even what Nintendo had envisioned for the system. While fun in both of its alternating play modes, Axelay truly shined in the forward-scrolling pseudo-3D scenes, which demonstrated some brilliant background design and careful object placement to create a convincing scrolling and depth effect. Even divorced of its whizzy graphics, it's still a great shooter. Soul Blazer. While Zelda may have set the standard for action RPGs, Quintet's follow-up to ActRaiser was no slouch. Revolving around a similar god-centric premise to its predecessor, Soul Blazer took the average of ActRaiser's sim and side-scroller elements and arrived at a top-down action game with brisk sword work and a rudimentary spell system. What really set it apart from its peers, though, was its excellent story, which punched well above its weight class and seemed more like something taken from Dragon Quest. With an interesting premise and surprisingly melancholic ruminations on the nature of morality and mortality, Soul Blazer still stands out as something special. And finally, Musya. One of the most expensive Super NES games on the aftermarket, this is another adventure set in feudal Japan. Unlike Mystical Ninja though, publisher Seta didn't give a wet slap about making it appealing for Americans. It's full of creepy Japanese folklore, yokai aplenty, and it even features Japanese text throughout the game and packaging. A dense, dark, and unconventional adventure, Musya is definitely worth checking out. For US Gamer, this is Jeremy Parrish. For more must-play essential video games, keep reading usgamer.net and subscribe to our rad YouTube channel.